G'day fellas. Absolutely huge update coming in. Now this is going to be a shorter video than usual, just because there's so much information in this patch note that if I was to go over everything and talk about everything, I'd probably be here for close to 2 hours. So what we're going to do is we're just going to be moving through the patch notes slowly. If there's something that you want to see, make sure that you pause the video or check down at the link in the description, because I'll include a link to the patch notes so that you can go and access them yourself. The most important thing that I'm interested in are the updates to balance. So I've already gone and have a look through at the balance notes. I did this about 16 hours ago. I did it actually live on stream. But because the changes have been so huge, especially to Sweden, and as you guys know, Sweden is my main squeeze. That's everything to me. It's important that I really understand those changes before I give any sort of critical feedback, or at least initial feedback about it. So I've gone and I've had some time to do that. I've done some testing. I've made sure that I know essentially where Sweden sits, and especially in the community, what the community's thinking of it. So the competitive community, and then I'm sort of going to throw on my feelings in addition to that. So when we look at the balance changes, so the very first thing is the Inca. So not huge changes for the Inca, basically just fixed a bug for the Maceman. So he couldn't use his snare ability, now he can use his snare ability. He can also now target naval units, and his siege attack is now properly halved in cover mode. And the Chasqui can't construct native embassies. And the main big thing here is that the Plume Spearman, the siege attack has been reduced from 42 to 35. And so this is a reduction of 7 or 20%. And that's huge when you think about it, right? If you've got, say, 10 Plume Spearmen, they're going to be all your siege. And now you're going to take 20% longer to start burning down stuff. So it's interesting. You know, it was famous for those rushes early on where you'd get the Chasqui and you'd ship the Plume Spearman to it. You know, if this change had been in at the very beginning of the game, I can think of at least 5 games where I would have potentially held or not lost my town center because the siege would have been reduced. The siege was quite high, so I'm glad to see that that's been addressed. And we can also see that they've also received buffs for the Boldest Warriors, with the cards increasing just in very slight numbers from 7 to 8, 6 to 7, and 13 to 16. So, for anybody who's wondering, the music in the background, that's playing at the moment, in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you can see what's now playing, so just give it a Google, check him out. He does a heap of lo-fi stuff, and really, really good quality stuff. Absolutely love it. It's all I've been listening to over the past couple of weeks, so I encourage you to go check it out. So, let's move on to the Indians. So, not a huge balance change, mainly addressing stuff for treaty, as they say here. So Siege Elephants, the card Professional Handlers, just decreases the population cost of Siege Ellies from -1 to -2. So it's not a bad change. I guess it's a supremacy change as well. If you get super duper late game and you're up against, say, a Swede like me who's just going to be building 15 cannons, then it probably becomes a supremacy change as well. And now the Ottomans. So the team defense wagons, or team defenses, now delivers military wagons rather than outpost wagons. So I don't know what distinguishes between, or what changes between a military wagon and an outpost wagon. I would have thought that a military wagon would be for the stable, for the barracks, for the artillery foundry, or the blockhouse, instead of the outpost wagon. So they said that they were doing this primarily to close an exploit. So it's not really a huge change. I don't think this card is used a lot, but even if it was changed to military wagons, I still don't think it'd be used a lot. Maybe in like a 3v3 or a 4v4 potentially. Now, pretty big changes to the Spanish and to the Papal Guard as well. So there's a lot of civilizations that have access to the Papal Guard. The main thing is with the Spanish. Now, I was actually going to be launching a video on this one coming up. It won't actually change the outcome of the video or really change the strategy in the video. It's still going to be applicable. But the interesting thing is that previously with the Papal Guard, so that was the fast industrial strategy that you would do, and it would immediately give you your crossbows and your pikemen their age 4 upgrade immediately. And so now what it does is it just enables guard crossbowmen and guard pikemen upgrades to be researched at no cost, rather than activating them. So it means that you still have to research them, you still have to wait all that time, you still have to build a barracks, your barracks still has to put it in queue, it can't build units at the same time, and then it's going to do it. So I think that this is a great change, because there was nothing worse than sort of playing against a fast industrial, and then all of a sudden, all of their units, as soon as they age up, are immediately upgraded. And then they've got these huge shipments of like 24 crossbows and 24 pikes, and they're all fully upgraded. And especially for the Spanish, so they're going to have to be paying for their royal upgrade for their tertio pikemans. So it's going to be 300 wood and 300 coin. So they're getting a little bit of a discount. So it's 100 wood and 100 coin discount, because the guard upgrades for crossbowmen and pikemen typically are 600 wood and 600 coin. So they're getting that on top of a 100 coin and wood discount. So it also says, where applicable, reduces the cost of other guard upgrades for hand infantry, such as those for halberdiers and doppelsoldners, to 300 wood and 300 coin. So I'm curious what interactions we'll see with this and, say, Rodoleros, whether Rodoleros will be affected by this, but I think this actually brings it in line and makes it quite a competitive age-up politician. Typically, you'd be taking something like the Engineer, which provides the 2 Falconets, gives you a lot of oomph in the late game, especially after you've invested all those resources into aging up. You know, it's nice to sort of be rewarded, well, not rewarded, but nice to be given something to sort of give you a bit of a safeguard. So other than that, now we move on to Sweden. Sweden. So initially my thoughts, well, I'll see if I can put on a clip for you guys to sort of summarize what my thoughts were for Sweden. Oh, my poor Carolians. Look how they massacred my boy. Look how they massacred my boy. Whew. Alright. Okay, so I've gone in, I've spent a little bit of time. So the first thing is they added a wood crate and they removed a food crate. So that's a huge buff. A wood crate is a lot of villager seconds. That's 200 villager seconds. A food crate is about 120 villager seconds. So that's a massive buff to starting resources. It means that you can do things like TP and a torp at the beginning of the game. And you don't have to chop for that second torp if you don't want to anymore. Or not if you don't want to, you don't need to chop for the second torp. And they've also made it so that Jaegers, Black Riders, and Landsknecht, or Landeschnecki, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sure I'll get a whole bunch of German comments saying, you've mispronounced Landsknecht. Well, I've called it the Landsknecht for like 15 years, and I don't think it's going to be very hard for me to stop now, so I do apologize. So they can now be recruited from the saloon as a default civilization feature. This is really big. So one of the things that people were hesitant to do with Swedish decks were to remove Jaegers and Black Riders from their decks, because they might have needed them. Like against Russia, you're going to need Black Riders because you're going to be up against Opraniks. You've got to chase them around, and Carolians just aren't going to do the job, so you have to include those in your deck. So now that they're included as a default civilization feature, it means that we've got access to Dragoons, and we don't have to have this in our deck anymore. It's not a big deal. We can just get up, build a saloon, and start training Black Riders straight away. So I think these are 2 really, really good changes. If anybody saw my recent civilization tier list, they'll know that Sweden was closer to the bottom than it was to the top. Now keep in mind, I'm looking at it from a perspective of a very hyper-competitive level. At the lower levels, Sweden is definitely an overpowered civilization because it's very difficult to counter. But once you understand how to counter it and can do it effectively, very, very, very simple. So these 2 changes definitely address Swedish balance and increase it. I would say that these are buffs for Sweden. These are great buffs. But now we get on to the torp, which has been changed significantly. So we see that the placement radius restriction has increased from 5 to 7.8. So they say that this not only reduces the number of torps that can be built around a single mine to 4, but will generally require Sweden to spread their torps out over a wider area of the map. And this is very true. So one of the best maps for Sweden is a map like Mongolia, where you start with an in-base gold mine. And the reason why is because you could fit 6 torps around it, and it had 5,000 coin on it, and essentially those 6 torps could be gathered coin for the next 30 minutes of the game. And you don't have that ability anymore. It's limited now. And further, it's much more difficult to actually fit 4 torps on a coin mine. The best way to do it that I've found is to use the corners. Where possible, try and put them on the corners. I'm still a little bit concerned about maps like Patagonia, though, where you spawn with 2 in-base coin mines, and they're very close to each other sometimes. So I don't know how I'm going to be able to get 8 torps down in my main base on Patagonia, but we'll see. It's something that we'll have to live with and learn. And so they've also increased the cost of the torp. So they've sort of given it the double whammy here by increasing the placement restriction radius and increasing the cost. Now, it is quite a significant increase. I would have been advocating for something more like a 5 wood increase rather than a 10 wood increase, because what's important to remember is that with just even a small increase in cost, it can delay the entire boom as a consequence, because it's an extra 5 wood each time. So that really starts to stack up. By the time you hit your 20th torp, that's 100 wood. How long does it take to chop 100 wood? And then you factor in each torp that's been subsequently delayed, and it's a huge amount of resources that you've missed out on. Now they've gone and made it 200 wood, so it's even bigger. So a massive nerf to the torp right there, but I think it's still a fair change. And then, so now we're moving on to the next one, which is reduce the amount of food in spawn berry bushes from 150 to 125 food. So this is another change that, I mean, I don't have too much of an opinion about it, because I always shipped blueberries, and I never really had to worry about berry bushes, because my blueberries had 500 food in them compared to the 150 that you started with here. So if anything, that would have been a buff to blueberries. So now we move on to the next point, which is berry bushes now have a build limit of 30 to prevent the body blocking of enemies during long matches, such as in FFA. So this is something that I addressed on my live stream, and I'm really concerned about this change. And the reason why is because often as a more cockroach style player, a lot of my torps get burnt down during the game. I will just go and put a torp right outside the enemy base. If it's on a coin mine, I don't mind. Just go chuck it down there. He's going to have to come and address that. He's going to have to come and burn it down. And when it does, it spawns a berry bush. But the problem is now that when berry bushes have a build limit of 30, it means that once my opponent has burnt down 10 of my torps, and then I've rebuilt all of them, so I've got 20 torps. If he burns down one more torp, the next torp that I build doesn't get a berry bush. And I've tested this in game, and I can confirm this is exactly how it works. And this is something that's concerning to me, because it means that as a player, I can't play in that same play style that I used to play. Now, obviously, the entire Swedish civilization is changing as a result of these. I can't play the same cockroach style that I used to. But nonetheless, it's concerning for me to think that if I'm playing against an aggressive Aztec player who's burning down my torps throughout the entire match, that when I get to like the 25-minute mark, my torps are just going to stop spawning berry bushes because of long matches like FFA to prevent body blocking. So I don't know if I'm really happy with this change. I'd probably be quite critical of this, just because of how often my torps are getting burnt down. I know exactly, it wouldn't be crazy for me to have matches where I built close to 60 or 70 torps, just because I played an hour and 27-minute game yesterday, and I must have built close to 100 torps that game. They were just constantly getting burnt down by the Russian player I was playing against, because he had Opronics just going all over the map, just killing my torps. I had to put them back up. He just kept burning them down. And so it's something that really, it sort of grinds me the wrong way. But anyway, let's move on. So berry bushes now respect rally points, allowing them to be planted in more convenient directions. Okay, so that's a good change. So really interesting changes to the torp. And I think it's probably important that we just skip over the Corollian for now and just go straight down to the changes to Blackberries and Blueberries. So they've changed these cards, and the reason why is because these go hand in hand. So Blueberries card has now been reworked in an effort to make to more effectively achieve its original design goals. So Blueberries now transform all pre-existing torp berry bushes into blueberry bushes. This should be useful in two ways: as a greedy early booming tactic, or as a way to make torps which were deconstructed and rebuilt in new locations, but more rewarding. And so I've gone through and I've tested exactly how this works. Once your torp has consumed the initial berry bush, so that's the 125 food berry bush, and you ship the blueberry card, you don't get a blueberry bush. If your if your berry bush has got 1 food left on it and your blueberry card arrives, congratulations, you now get a bush that's got, I think it's close to about 400 food, or about 380 food on it that can be consumed. So if you mistime it, and just hypothetically, let's say you put a whole bunch of torps up, let's say you put 10 torps up in this period of about a minute, and you send your blueberries card just that, 30 seconds late or 40 seconds late, you will lose every single one of those bushes, and they will not be turned into blueberry bushes. They will simply just disappear forever. And when you ship that blueberries card, you get nothing from it. Absolutely nothing. It doesn't spawn a new bush where the remainder of the resources that would have been given to you had there been a berry bush initially. I'm not sure if I'm explaining this well to you guys, but essentially, this is a huge nerf to the blueberries. I can't ever see this being viable. the only situation I can see it being viable is a situation where you might do like a fast fortress into 1,000 wood and then ship blueberries. Because then with the 1,000 wood, you can get all of your torps up at the same time and then ship blueberries, and the berry bush hasn't been consumed yet. That's the key though, because the blueberry bush is going to be consumed. So, the initial berry bush is going to be consumed very quickly. In about 6 minutes, it gets consumed. So you have got to act fast. You've got to act incredibly quickly to get your torp in, or to get your blueberries in. So anyway, and other changes. So they've also reduced the ironworks has been nerfed from 125% down to 100%, and blackberries can now be resent upon reaching the Imperial Age. Now, just a note here, blackberries is a little bit bugged at the moment, so I would advocate not including this in your deck at the moment, just because it doesn't seem to get picked up by the torps. At least about 50% of them will continue avoiding being picked up by the torps until you send blueberries. So if you send blackberries and then you send blueberries, for whatever reason, the torps are then starting to pick up the blackberries, and they'll even consume them both at the same time. And they also consume the blackberries at the same rate that they consume blueberries. So I've done the math on this, and it seems to only work in about 50% of the torps, but essentially you can have blueberry torps that just gather for like 40 minutes in a game, and that gather at a really, really fast speed. But anyway, I still wouldn't advise doing it just because it's so inconsistent, as you can see in the game here. Some of them have got it, some of them don't. But anyway, let's move on to the changes for the Carolean as well. So a really, really great change to the Carolean. I'm overall incredibly happy with the Carolean changes. So the range has been increased from 10 to 12. This is going to be a huge help to the Carolean in Age 2. It was absolutely terrible trying to fight against even musketeers because you were just kept microed on so terribly and kited away from. And so the Veteran Guard and Imperial upgrade no longer grants +1 range, somewhat taking back the 2 range here. So this is also a really good change because it means that in the Imperial and the Guard, or the Industrial and the Imperial ages, the Carolean is not going to be as strong. And then Snaplock. They've reduced the bonus range granted from +4 to +3, so it means that your Caroleans are essentially going to max out at 15 range, which is what they have in Fortress Age. I'm really happy with this change. Incredibly good. It still means that they are going to be able to outrange things like the Ashigaru or the British Musketeer in the 3rd Age, but they're not going to be able to go toe-to-toe with skirmishers as easily. So absolutely insane change. Really, really happy with it. They've also, with Platoon Fire, so that's the card in the 3rd Age, they've reduced the heavy cavalry multiplier from +1 to +7. So not a huge nerf, because they already do have quite a large base, a base increase. To be honest, I don't actually ship this card for that bonus. I ship it for the 10% extra attack, which is more meaningful. I don't think against, or typically opponents are going to be making heavy cavalry against Caroleans. Obviously, it happens in team games, and it can happen in lower numbers in 1 versus 1. And I suspect it'll probably begin to happen even more now that they've nerfed this. But this is quite a big nerf. I think it was a needed nerf. It wasn't something that I expected, but it was something that is needed. So the Caroleans no longer inflict bonus damage to light ranged cavalry. So that's units like the Dragoon, the Router, the War Wagon, the Zambarak, things like that. So it means that that you're not just going to absolutely destroy light range cavalry anymore. And it means that you're probably going to have to start including Jaegers in your unit composition a little bit more than what you used to. And so additional unit balance changes. So leather cannons can now be trained from forts. Sure, don't really use forts. Most people don't really use them, but nonetheless, it's a good change. And hacker pellets increase range resistance from 10% to 20%. And the harquebuses have been adjusted accordingly. This is a really good change. So hacker pellets only really ever got used against Spain in 1v1 just because they've got such high melee attacks. They're almost like an Ulan. But now that this has been increased from 10% to 20%, I'm almost tempted to start trying them out in some games, so very curious to see. And then we've got upgrades to the Mercenary Contractor for Age 3, so this is an age-up politician. Now allows Jaegers and Black Riders to be trained from regular military buildings. Ah, okay, so here this is Jaegers, Black Riders, and Landsknecht can now be recruited from the Saloon as a default civilization feature. The key here is the Saloon, so it's one building, and you can only build one Saloon, you can't build more than them. If you want to move that around the map, you're gonna have to delete it and build it again. But here, it looks like, so this is the Mercenary Contract. A lot of civilizations have got this. It includes, like, certain civilizations can get access to, other mercenaries, and they can train it from the Saloon as a guarantee, like the Portuguese get access. I think it's to the Lille Bombard in Age 4. And so that's a really cool change. So the Swedes also get 3 Hussars. This is crazy. I'm already seeing like a new strategy that I'm going to be implementing, and it's going to involve 3 hussars. So really excited for that. All contract cards now unlock the ability to recruit any mercenaries they deliver from regular military buildings. So this is interesting. Hold on. Okay, so I don't have to age up with the mercenary contractor. As long as I ship Jaegers in my from my home city, I can then train it in my regular military buildings. That's amazing. That's really good. Because my concern was you never age up with this mercenary contractor because it takes too long. As Swedes, you're always aging up with the exiled prince. Only ever aging up with the exiled prince. 100% of the time. There's never anything else you take. And so I was concerned that this is going to take too long to age up with. But the fact that you can now do this is huge. So I still think we're going to see players include Jaegers and Black Riders in their decks. And then Fusiliers, so they've reduced the cost from 700 down to 400 coin and reduced the number of Fusiliers delivered from 4 to 3. So you've got a lower initial impact, but as a result, you've also got a higher bar a lower bar to reach, because you've only got to get 400 coin compared to the 700 that it initially cost, and it was very expensive. And the really good thing about this is it allows you to begin training Fusiliers. And as we read up above here, we can recruit any mercenaries they deliver from regular buildings, which means in Age 2, you can now ship Fusiliers and then begin training them in your barracks. Now, keep in mind, they're really expensive. They're 300 coin each. So it's still going to be difficult. But, hey, it means that we've got the Fusiliers in Age 2, and they're going to actually counter light range cavalry. So that's cool. Now, we've already gone over the changes for Ironworks and for Blackberries. Overall, there appears to be 2 schools of thought. Some people think this is a buff for Sweden, some people think it's a nerf. The type of playstyle that I play, this is definitely a nerf. I'm, as the Torp god, I play a cockroach style, where I build Torps all over the map, everywhere, in every corner of the map, and I just try and survive and build up units, and I'm not going to be able to do that anymore, so it's definitely a nerf to the way that I play. But I see a couple of interesting strategies potentially coming out of the woodworks here for Sweden. I don't know how they're going to be in regard to balance, but I would say overall this is a nerf. Just primarily because Blueberries is an integral part of the meta at the moment for most Swedes, and Ironworks is as well. And these are both really big nerfs. On top of that, we've also seen the Carolian nerfs. To be honest, I wouldn't say this is a nerf. I would say that this is a change. I wouldn't say that it's been nerfed here. Even with something like this. So it's overall, I would say the bottom line is it's a nerf, but nonetheless, I'm still curious how it's going to play out. So for anybody who's still made it to this point in the video, I'm currently streaming live on Twitch. I'm probably going to be streaming for, I don't know, anywhere between 10 and 12 hours, and I'm just going to be playing Sweden. I'm going to be looking at testing all their build orders. At the moment, I've got 2 build orders in mind. I'll show you the decks that I've got. So the first one is a 1v1 deck. This is going to be my aggressive deck. It's got 8 pikes, 3 hussars, 2 leather cannons, 8 crossbows. So the idea is I'm going to go full aggro. I'm going to age up with the governor. I'm going to build like a couple torps in transition. And then I'm just going to put a forward racks down with the governor. And I'm going to ship every single one of these. And I'm going to try and crush the opponent. At the same time, I'm going to take the trade route. That's going to be the key here. I'm going to take the trade route and try and use that. I'm not going to be building torps at all. I'm not going to be focusing on them. I've got Blueberries in my deck. I don't think it's going to do anything though. I don't think I'm ever going to ship this. Unless there's a point where I somehow manage to ship maybe 700 or 600 wood and then build a whole bunch of torps at the same time. So the second strategy that I'm going to be doing is 1v1 estates. So it's going to start out not going onto estates. We're going to be going 3 villas, taking a TP in the first stage, and then I'm going to be shipping the Prospector Wagon, which increases the gather yield for the mine by 25%, which means that mines last longer. On top of that, once we age up to the second age, I'm going to be shipping Fusiliers straight away, so that I can train them from my racks. I'm going to try massing them with leather cannons and try and keep the leather cannons alive for as long as possible. Then my next card after that is going to be Silversmith, which increases the gathering rate for coin mines, and it also increases the gathering yield even further. So it means that I can have 20 villages. So I'm going to be getting my market upgrade. So it's 10% plus 20%. That's 30%, plus the 20% here, plus 20% from over here. Oh, sorry, there's no 20% here. So it's plus 50% gather rate in total from my market upgrades and my Silversmith. And I'm just going to be spamming Fusiliers. And then once I age up, then I've got all of these mercenaries to choose from. And with the Fusiliers, I might be making leather cannons as well. We'll see how it goes, but those are the 2 strategies at the moment that I've got planned. So a Mercs strategy and a just an early aggression strategy, which would be a pretty standard Swedish one, but I'm curious to see how it's going to go. So we'll switch on back over. So just continuing going. So the main thing that I'm interested now in is what they're looking at for their ongoing investigation. So each patch notes, they sort of tell us what they're going to be going through or what they're going to be targeting in the next investigation. So for anybody who is curious about any of the things here I'm skipping over, feel free to pause the video, or as I said earlier in the video, just head down to the link in the description. So ongoing investigation, attack move optimization and fixes. A prevalent topic of discussion. The team is digging into the issue and looking for ways to ensure that it performs as expected in all circumstances. Watch for updates in upcoming builds. This is so amazing. This is so great. Attack move is a huge issue in Age of Empires 3. In Age of Empires 2, so I've started playing Age of Empires 2 recently, you just patrol your units. You just send them to the other side of the map and you patrol them. And guess what? You get an under attack notification. You go over and have a look. Your archers are firing at the enemies. It doesn't happen in Age of Empires 3. You go over in Age of Empires 3, you go over and look at your attack notification, and all of your falconets are walking into the enemy musketeers. And you're like, oh bro, guys, I told you guys to attack move. And attack move just doesn't seem to be respected. So hopefully it'll get fixed up. That'd be really, really cool to see. So they're improving mod support for custom maps and scenarios. They're investigating stuck units, investigating crashes, and investigating the Windows store. So I know that I haven't gone over everything, but we're already at quite a long video. We're at 26 minutes into this video currently. So I just want to say to you guys, thank you for sticking around. I hope that you've enjoyed a somewhat shorter look at the video, and I'll leave you guys with the following words. I'm so excited about Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition. This is another amazing change that's come through from the devs. They're very clearly listening to what we wanted. Sweden needed a change. It needed a design fix. And it's incredibly difficult as a developer to go and change something that you've put so much hard work into because the community isn't happy with it in the way that it is. There were comments that Sweden was one-dimensional, that you simply just built Carolians and cannons and that was it. And they've addressed that. They've fixed it. So I'm incredibly excited for the direction of the game. I'm looking forward to the tournaments that are coming up. So without further ado, I don't think that's the right word. I guess it would just, my parting comments would just be, I'm excited. And let's get to it. So I'm heading over to Twitch. Come say good day. And I'll see you over there. Thanks, fellas. Have a good one.